As you know, we all have used this. I definitely know. I've once used Lava as well, and I know a lot of people who use it. And the topic is, marketing function, which was seen, and still a lot of brands see it as a cost center, and a lot of them see it as a revenue center. So the approach has changed, over a period of time. Perspectives have changed, mindsets have changed. But let me ask you, when you, as a business leader, as a marketing leader, when you started your career and where we are now, did you ever face a time when it was seen, as a cost, and you were really worried about spends, and you had to explain what these spends mean? Have you faced those kind of situations in your career?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here today. So, first, like you said, there's definitely a change from how marketing was viewed earlier to how it is viewed now. So it's more considered to be business linked than it was in the past. And the reason for that is that you now have more measurability than you had earlier, especially with the digital marketing coming in, with becoming the lead marketing vehicle, so to say. That has brought in a lot of transparency into how it is translating, how your actions are translating into the business, real business, right? Which was not the case earlier. You would put up a hoarding and you wouldn't know how much sale has it generated, right? And that used to be the huge cost. So definitely in the past it was viewed as only a cost center, not really knowing. People knew that it has to be done, but you didn't know how much business it will bring. But just to tell you what used to happen very frequently is that you would start the year with a certain budget. Let's say it is 10 crores, and you would make all your plans for the year, saying, okay, I'm good. This is how I'm going to spend my 10 crores throughout the year. And suddenly one day the CEO would come and say, you see, in the month of September, he would say, okay, now we don't have 10 crores. You already spent 7, you're left with 3. So, because this is the easiest cost to cut, right? And so everybody would first jump into, when any cost cutting initiative will happen, they would first go to marketing saying, oh, this is the easiest one to really cut down. So, and that meant that nobody really saw it a very strong enabler for the business, which is very different today. I think things have changed a lot, but I think it still happens to a large extent. So yeah, that's the change I have seen in my life over time.
Right. And so metrics is when, of course, the digital part came in. You got metrics, you could see a dashboard that could give you the numbers. But is that the only factor that changed the mindset of people? What led to that cultural change, if you could, dwell into it a bit?
I think one, definitely this led to a behavior change, in the sense that because now that you can measure it, so therefore everybody started behaving in the same manner. So that, I think, a large part of the cultural shift is because of the measurability which has come into play. And secondly, also because I think earlier there was competition, and but I guess the competition intensity has only gone up over time. And that is also because also when the economy opened up and you had more players, you had more competition coming in, there was lesser of a monopoly in the industries. That also made sure that everything that you're spending, you are asked for bang for the buck. So because of competitor, then you get the data of how much competitor is spending, how much you're spending, and when you compare the notes and you see that maybe your competitor is doing a better job. So that has also led to a shift in the way people have started thinking about marketing now.
So finally, when you joined, when you co-founded Lava, a lot of things were in your hand, How did you approach marketing at that point? Because it was a startup at that point, 14 years back. And how did you look at marketing? Was it a cost for you at that point? Did you approach it as a cost? Did you approach it as an investment? What was it like 14 years back?
I think no, we started as very naive. Honestly speaking, there were about 300 brands that we were competing against. The only formula everybody had, जो दिखता है वो बिकता है, right? So the more you spend, the more business you will get. Because at that time, there were only Indian companies who were fighting among themselves, and we usually used to be number one, number two, number three would be Indian companies itself. So the idea at that time was not really so, because the growth was also very fast. We were growing at a very rapid pace, and therefore marketing spends were not that of a problem. So therefore, I think we spent very inefficiently in the initial time, because we didn't realize that this money that is being consumed so recklessly is finally going to come back to haunt us at some point in time, and which it did. And the result is that out of those 300 companies that we were competing against, 299 companies don't exist anymore, right? So we're the only ones left behind.
So wrong marketing led to that, right?
I think I would say reckless spending on many areas, and marketing was one such area. And of course, there were other issues also that were there. But I'm saying we never put a very serious thought into saying how this marketing has to be done, how we have to make sure that 1 rupee travels farther, and it kind of becomes 1.25 rupees, so to say. We never thought about it. But when you are constrained for resources, when you are a challenger, which is our new avatar, we are a challenger now, and we are constrained for resources, you definitely look at different matrices. You look at how do you make sure that every bang for the buck is achieved.
I remember, the clutter that you're talking about, especially in the category that you are in, and still Lava is around. It is launching new products. What has worked for you when we talk about marketing? What has really worked for you that has made you stand out and still, exist, be there in the market, look for expansion?
I think one important thing in marketing is to really be able to define your problem very clearly. Most of the time, that's where we make the mistake. That we are not able to define the problem very clearly. So when we looked at, because like I said, it's a new avatar for us, because earlier we were doing very well, and then the disruption took place, and we had to rebuild ourselves. And the place where we stand today is that now we have reinvented ourselves, and we have become a startup again, as it's almost as good as we're a new company, and then trying to figure out how to do things. So our approach basically has been, I've had many years of experience in marketing. So when I kind of look back and see what are the mistakes that I made, so then I realized that it's very important to really clearly pinpoint what the problem is. So in our case, we figured there are three clear problems. One is that from a marketing standpoint, we were not so visible in the market. So our competitors would paint everything green and blue and whatever colors they had. They would do that everywhere. So we wouldn't be there, because we didn't have the resources to do that. Then also because people had lost trust in Indian companies. So we had to rebuild that trust, and we were seeing how can marketing rebuild that trust, and how can this be handled through the marketing initiatives. And the third one was that people didn't feel that carrying an Indian smartphone or an Indian brand really gave them any pride. So we therefore simplified to say, in my earlier avatar, I would have used terminologies like, awareness or imagery and things like that, We said that's not what it is. We have to explain it in the simplest terms, that all of us in the company, whether you are in marketing or you're not in marketing, all of us should understand it in the same fashion. So we renamed these 3 parameters. We said, what is our problem? Problem number 1 is visibility, right? Problem number 2 is credibility. And problem number 3 is pride. So we have to solve, through marketing interventions, these 3 particular problems. And then we went about creating programs for each of these areas, which we were not doing earlier. Earlier we used to say, okay, my competitor is doing 1, 2, 3, 4. I also need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Maybe I'll do more of that. So then more of that philosophy versus being very clear about what do you want to solve, what specifically you want to solve as far as the problem is concerned. I think that shift in our thinking has come in, and which I would say a large part of our growth today that is happening is thanks to our renewed thinking about this whole approach.
Talking of mistakes that you said, Lava in its 14 years, and you as a someone who has led the marketing strategy, when you look back and we talk about mistakes, do you think there are anything that you would have done in a different way? Anything that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I think one thing, I think this is something that happens to the marketing function very often, is that you somehow you fantasize the jargons. It's like it's when the new jargon comes in the market, you want to be the first one to catch on to that, right? Because you want to show, okay, I know this new jargon out there, and then you lose the connect with the consumers. You get more immersed in the jargons than in the consumers. So earlier in our marketing, in my earlier days, we would just assume that this is what customers must be thinking, and this is the solution that I must give that person, and it will get solved. I think we've changed that completely, and this is from the learning. So today, there are two key things that we've changed. One is simplify. When the world is going to jargonize marketing, you simplify it at the same pace, right? Which means you make it extremely simple for even the layman to understand what you're talking about, right? So it's like going to the basics. So that particular part is has something that has really worked for us. And second is go out and meet customers, because in the digital world, I mean, for us, the customer is what that person does. It is not why that person does what that person does. The digital marketing world, and which is what a lot of data crunching that we do, is more about what the customer is doing. It is not about why that person is doing what that person is doing. And that why cannot be answered unless and until you meet those people. I mean, in the virtual world, practically the DP is the person you are, right? And in reality, the DP and the real person are two different people. Exactly, they're poles apart. But there's a different self out there in the digital world, and real person is someone else. But when you meet them and you talk to them, you find amazing insights. And we have this session every 15 days wherein all marketing and product guys go out in the market. We have a very large hall, and some people make a presentation and talk about the consumers they've met and what did they learn from them, what are the new things that they are picking up. So it's now become cultural to us that we have to always go and talk to customers.
You raised a very valid point, and we are at this forum where the crux is what is effective marketing. End of the day, that is what we really want to pin down to, that what is effective marketing. And as you said, that we need to go out and listen to our consumers, but in a CMO's daily life, normally it is a very layered, you get that information at second hand, of course, but because the CMO won't have time to go out and understand. One is how does a CMO deal with this lack of maybe time to go out, understand it firsthand. Whatever information we get is through research agencies and all. How much should we believe in that? Of course, they are valid points, but as a CMO, I mean, how can a CMO be a hands-on leader? Second, how do you define effective marketing? What is your definition of effective marketing?
Okay, so this time thing about CMOs, I would say it all depends on what you prioritize. If you are a marketing head, if you're a CMO, you better find time for market, right? Because your title carries market in it. So you better go and talk to people in the market. So therefore, there's no other way to do it. So you need to find time.
Do you actually go to the market? Do you go to the stores to check?
Of course I do. I do regularly. I do about at least 3 days in the month. Although I don't handle only marketing, I handle many other functions. But I go at least 3 days a month for sure, because that's a mandate that we have put on all of us, that we have to do it, right? So it is very, very important to do that. The effective marketing is, I would say, one objective is how do you drive the business, right? Which is, of course, you can call that effective marketing. But I don't think marketing's job is to uh, only ensure that how much business we will get this year, right? Or maybe next month or next 2 months, etc. I don't think it's limited to that. Marketing has a broader role, and broader role is that how do you bring the soul of the brand alive in the consumer's mind. Uh, it's not just about just nice communication, but eventually it must add up to saying this is the brand, this is the personality, and this is the kind of brand that I would like to connect with. Building that connect is very important, and that I would say I would call effective marketing. Of course, business is an outcome of how strong a brand you build, not the other way around. So I think that would be it.
There's another approach to marketing, especially which happens around some events that take place. It can be a sporting event, it can be anything of that sort. Just go all out and just, bombard them and then just capture their attention. And the other one is frugal approach. Despite having the budgets, you go frugal, you go targeted. What works? What is the best approach? And is the mix of the two the best? I mean, what does Lava look at,
I think it is a mindset thing. When you have resources, you generally tend to spend them lavishly, right? You have more money, and therefore, you spend more, and you try and find where all can I paint everything. But I think the way I look at marketing is that if you have 100 rupees budget or you have 100 crore budget, the approach is that how can I make this 100 rupees equal to 120 rupees and make that 100 crore equal to 120 crores. So how can I maximize the value from the same expenditure is something that I would rather want to do. And then it all depends on, say for example, I'll give you our example. When you said the most effective, you go to any research, go through any research in the world. And one most effective marketing tool that every research will tell you is word of mouth, right? And word of mouth does not cost anything. It just costs nothing. But tell me how many people are really working on the word of mouth as a core strategy in doing marketing? I would say very few, right? People generally say, and when the year starts and people start asking, "Ab is saal kitna budget aayega?" Right? And that's what gets them excited. Achha, this year it is 100 crores. And then they start figuring out, achha, is 100 crore kaise spend karna hai? That is why this problem of saying, our CFO is saying, okay, this guy only keeps spending money and doesn't get any business for us. Because that's how the whole thing works. But I think this approach, for example, in our case, what we implemented some programs wherein we are able to generate the word of mouth in the market. So wherein you spend very, very minimal amount of money but get a higher bang for buck. So there are tools available which you can just start working on.
In your previous answer, you said Indian brands had a certain challenge. There was no aspiration, or people really, you had to find a reason to own one. How has that bit changed now? I mean, what is your reading of that part?
I think things have changed completely. In fact, today being an Indian brand is an advantage that we have, which wasn't the case some time back. That's because of the geopolitical issue that has taken place, and today people prefer to buy Indian products. Look at what is happening in cars, Tatas and Mahindras. The sales going through the roof. And we are also experiencing the same thing. It's just that people didn't really trust the products, the quality, the experience that they would get from these products. But now that has changed, and all of us have made sure that we are able to build our products which are of global standards. And once you do that, the consumers are happier to buy an Indian product than buy an international product. So in a way, the tide has turned in our favor now. So that's a good news.
So this complete change of perception of a brand, of course, you're pumped in a lot of marketing dollars, and they have delivered. But if I talk about the medium, because there was a panel before this, and I really want to ask you this question, that in terms of mediums, which one has delivered the most for you?
I think we have mostly been doing digital marketing, and we have a very limited offline marketing. So there are two key areas that we have especially focused on. One is our digital marketing, and then there is a retail stores. So these are two places where we have spent the most. So we have not really spent on other platforms yet, and I think that has worked very, very well for us. Because like I said, as a company, when your resources are limited, you really want to know that whether 1 rupee that you spent is actually giving you at least 1 rupee value, or it is just 50 paisa. So for us, this has worked very well. But I think it depends on the objective that you have. For example, if you want to build aspiration, then maybe you will have to do your marketing in different places, let's say airports or aeroplanes or whatever. It depends on what your finally marketing objective is. So for us, these are the two platforms that we worked on.
So we've seen also you launched new products, recently, and is your focus going to be smartphones, or we're going to see something new in this portfolio?
No, smartphone is definitely going to be our key focus because we belong to the industry, and we see huge potential and opportunity for us. One, because we are ready in terms of our product capability, in terms of our distribution capability. We are ready for taking the smartphones to the next level. Other than that, there are another category that we are now focusing on, which is smart wearables category, which is your smart audio and smart watches. And smart watches in particular has got huge market, and it's huge potential, and also it is at a stage where I would say what mobile industry was about 10 years back. The smartwatch industry is exactly at that space right now. Lesser competition, and competition primarily among Indian players. You don't have any foreign player very strongly positioned there, which will happen in some time. And the readiness of the Indian companies to really be able to compete for the future at this stage is lesser. But with our capability and our learning for the last so many years, and also having really taken on the foreign players for so long, and we have our own experience of doing that, and we believe for us the readiness is much higher compared to what others have, and therefore we think we'll be able to do a much better job there.
My last two questions. You spoke about CMOs and CFOs, the need for them to speak the same language. How can that be? I mean, how to make that happen easily, in your view?
What is the problem of CFOs with CMOs? The problem is that they see marketing as a fixed expense, right? And they say, okay, the business कुछ भी चल रहा हो, ये अपना marketing spend तो करेगा ही करेगा, right? Because he said, I've committed my television, I've committed this property, that property, and all of that, right? So because it's a fixed expense, the CFOs are always worried, because when the business goes up and down, the marketing money does not go up and down. It just stays saying, okay, I've got my budget for the year, I'm going to spend it, right? I don't even know what is happening to business as a CMO. That's where the problem comes. I think one change one can bring, which is what we have brought in our company, is that made marketing as a variable expense, not a fixed expense. Let me tell you the practical problem that we have solved by doing that is because you start with a plan for the year, and it's not necessarily the plan will go exactly the same way that you thought. But because mostly the marketing guys are oblivious of the business results, so they kind of continue doing what they are supposed to do. And suddenly in the middle of the year, when the numbers are not going in the right way, and suddenly there's a huge cut on marketing expense that takes place because it's a fixed cost. And then the mood in the marketing department is very they all feel disappointed that how can this be done, and etc. So what we did is we convert into a variable expense, saying that now CFO cannot tell me that you have to do a cut of the money, which also ensures that the CMO is looking at the numbers all the time. He's not just hitting a surprise at one point in time. At 6 months, he's hitting a surprise. Okay, the business is not going well. He exactly knows every month what is happening to the business. And that person is automatically changing his strategies and spends and figuring out how this marketing spend can be aligned to the business results, which has been a disconnect for a very long time. I think this can be solved. And once they come on the same page, then there's no argument.
Don't keep your spends, don't set them in stone, right? That is the mantra. My last question is about, of course, the landscape is changing, technology is changing, metrics are evolving. What should CMOs prepare for?
So I think CMOs will have to, I think on technology front, they will have to prepare for a lot of things. For example, I know it is a cliche, but it is a fact also that AI is going to play a major role in times to come. If you're not really technology minded, then you will be in trouble. So you have to be technology minded. You have to always keep looking for the changes that are taking place. We all have seen changes in our lives, right? And the changes, either they appear to hit us suddenly or they appear to happen slowly. It depends on the fact how closely or away you are monitoring them. If you're away from it, this change is going to hit you suddenly. But if you're monitoring it every day very closely, the change will appear slower, and the time for you to maneuver will be higher. But in a situation where it is hitting you all of a sudden, then you're in a difficult spot. You are not really able to figure out how to really manage the change. So the trick is to keep on watching the trends, extremely closely, so that you don't hit that sudden hit of the change that takes place.
Thank you, Mr. Raina. We're done with our time, but really thank you for sharing your insights on this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thanks a lot.